The countdown is on for Capella Music Festival on Saturday, March 29th at the Festival Green, Camana Bay. An unforgettable experience and non-stop entertainment presented by Cayman Airways and Camana Bay, featuring international stars Ashanti, Clean Bandit, Gramps Morgan, Kamani Marley, and Elaine, Nyla Blackman, and DJ Puffy, alongside local artists and DJs across 3 stages. Purchase at Tier 1 pricing while supplies last at CapellaMusicFestival.com or in-store at Blackbeard's, AA Rubis, FIS MoneyGram, Winter Circle, Tortuga, and Sing's Roadie Shop. Capella Music Festival, Saturday, March 29th. A true festival experience. Brought to you by the Cayman Islands Department of Tourism, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, Hopscotch Productions, Bacardi, Massive Equipment, Barreau Development, and Stingray Media.
This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority, committed to caring for you. The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And happy Wednesday, K-Man, and welcome. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon, and welcome here to Straight Talk and jumping straight into the action, Mr. Harris. We have a guest with us today.
We certainly do. Today is Wednesday, and I guess we might soon have to start calling it Candidate Wednesday, because we do have the distinct pleasure of our first candidate of the day from the constituency of Red Bay, running as an independent. Mr. Philip Ebanks is our guest in studios. Mr. Ebanks, Mr. Philip, I don't know what I should call you, but good evening and welcome to Straight Talk.
Thanks so much for having me on Straight Talk, guys. I really appreciate it. And first of all, I'd like to say great big good afternoon to the good people of Red Bay and the Cayman Islands. You know, I've been getting so many good calls, people calling, congratulating me on this move. They really appreciate the fact that someone of my background is there to run for Red Bay, and they see it as a bright opportunity for change. You know, amidst all that we're hearing about parties, I think the big word is C, is change.
Yes.
And clearly, I think that that is what my candidacy represents. You know, the question that comes up is, why am I running? You know, it's a good question, and it's worth asking, and I appreciate it. Well, my background is that I had the last 20 years as an attorney at law. And then prior to that, I had 20 years, 22 years or thereabouts as a public servant. During my public service, I spent a good amount of my time in the police department. I finished off as a superintendent at a superintendent of uniform branch at that point in time. But I had a good run of it in terms of a variety of different experiences there in the police department. At one point, I was in charge of the police budget. At another point, I spent quite a bit of time in traffic. So I understand traffic and traffic congestion and traffic issues very well. And then towards the end of my public service experience, I had a 3 or 4 year stint at the vehicle licensing department, where I was actually the first director of licensing at the time. And Mr. Jefferson recruited me to really set the department up.
Right.
And much of the things that you see there today are things that I put in place at that point in time.
Okay.
We also started the Public Transport Board at that time. It was new, and you know, in a sense, I am happy that I was able to start it, but I'm also saddened in a sense that it never got off the ground past that point. You know, we basically took, and it was supposed to be an initial opportunity to kind of pull things together so that, you know, we could make some sense of the minibus situation. But it was supposed to be a stepping stone. It was supposed to be the end all to it.
Right.
And now, 22, 23 years later, it's effectively the same thing. So when it comes to things like public transport, you know, I have a passion for that. I think that we should get that done. We need to get it done. You know, many people will say, well, you know what, I'm not going to give up my car. Well, the fact of the matter is that most people haven't seen a properly running public transport system, properly marked buses, on time, you know, clean and available. You know, once you actually experience a system, then I think that a lot of people will say, you know what, maybe I've changed my mind, but I think in order for it to work, we obviously have got to go about setting the system up. We've got to spend the time and effort on it. There is a public transport system there. Public transport plan.
Yeah.
And I want to dust that off and get that out and get to work on that if I'm given the opportunity. Beyond that, you know, when you start thinking about Red Bay and Red Bay specific issues, as I go into homes in Red Bay, people are disappointed because over the last 4, 8, 12 years, they've hardly seen their MP. And that's really saddening because, you know, our MPs are really well paid. Some of the best paid MPs in the world. I mean, you look at premiers that make double the amount as the British Prime Minister, and about 25% more than the American president.
Very well compensated.
Rare, you know, so there's no excuse not to have access to your MP.
Yeah.
And as we go along in those constituency, you hear people come out and say, well, thank you so much for just coming,
Right.
just showing up.
Right.
And it's been a great opportunity for me because I've been able to become reacquainted with a lot of people that I've met along the way. One famous thing, or at least I think it's famous, is that I walk into a home in the constituency, and a gentleman walks out, and I know him. I've seen him for years and years, you know, and he says to me, "Mr. Phil, don't worry, I'm voting for you." I said, "But hold a second. Can I just tell you a little bit about my program?"
Sure.
He said, "No, I trust you."
Oh, well done.
Yeah.
And
There's a
and
bit of confidence.
that's something that really touched me, and it harkens back to something that I did, 30 years ago,
Right.
where the individual could hardly speak English at the time,
Right.
and he remembered it. I didn't, honestly, but it was at a time when he just kind of come to the island. He was married and he was trying to get settled in, and he couldn't read and write English.
Yes.
And he said to me, "I have a real difficulty," and I took a little time out and I did an oral test with him, you know, and he remembered that, and to him that was a big thing.
Right.
And to me, I just did it because I thought it was the right thing to do. You know, people need help. You know, the thing about help is this: you have to find people where they are, and you need to help them where they are. You know, sometimes today we think that we have to kind of run around with a you know, nothing against people who collect garbage, right? Of course, that's good. That's important. But every day you get opportunities to help people. And you need to have your ears and your eyes open so that you can actually help them where you find them. And I think that if all of us did a bit more of that, you know, the world would be so much better, you know?
The world would be better, and Red Bay would be better for sure. I want to jump in there to actually give you a little plug. I've said this before. Maybe you've listened, maybe you haven't. But I want to also ask you some, you know, as you go around, what are some of those issues you want to address? But I have to say this, when I was very young, I used to be speeding around in my car, and you were that one gentleman that went out of your way, even went to my parents, "Hey, you need to talk to this kid and get him to slow down."
Wow.
And I want to tell you thanks for that, because that may have made a difference of whether I'm actually sitting in this chair today or not.
Wow.
It clearly
So-
had an impact.
Wow. Well, you know,
It made a difference. I appreciate
you hear that, you know, people sometimes come up to me and say, "Remember you gave me, you know," they say, "You gave me my driver's license." What they mean is I tested them for their driver's license
Sure.
20 years, 30 years, 40 years ago. And I still have them. Remember what you told me, be careful.
Yes.
And I said, you know, so it's good. But moving on to the issues in Red Bay.
Yeah.
Clearly, the issues of traffic and traffic congestion is a biggie. You know, as you come out of all of those side roads, whether it's Victory, Prospect Drive, Admiral's Landing, Selkirk, you are in a real dire spot coming out onto Shamrock
Yes.
in particular. Selkirk has a very specific issue in that not only are you coming out onto the main road in heavy congestion,
You got to make the left.
but you got to make that left, number one. And secondly, if you look at the line of vision on the right,
Oh, yeah.
there's a real difficulty there because cars are coming up that straight.
Yes.
And they're coming at a pace because they just got it around the boat and they want to get going.
Yes.
And so
it's
they're
a race to 40, 45 miles an hour in a short period of time.
It's waiting.
Zero to
It's
60.
waiting. It is waiting to happen.
Yeah.
It is waiting. It's and I think that we need to have what you call fair opportunity traffic lights at that Selkirk. We need to have that right away. And the reason why is that because clearly, while you might argue and say, well, it's not going to improve the pace of the traffic, but it's going to improve safety.
Right.
Safety. And
So you
once
think you would sacrifice the flow of traffic for the safety concerns?
That's right. And you think about it, one of the biggest stresses that you have when you come out of those side roads onto a main road is, you know, you got your neck on a swivel because you're trying to see what's coming on either side of you. There's 2 or 3 lanes of traffic traveling on the main road. Sometimes there's an omnibus in there as well, so that's another danger. But you don't get the chance to kind of take a breath and relax just a bit.
Well, it's very much a highway.
Yes. If you come up to traffic lights, the one thing that you can be assured of is that, hey, my time is going to come. I'm going to get a, it might wait a little bit, but I'm going to get a spot. I'm going to get a chance.
Right.
So, you know, and those things can be adjusted. And like I said, it's fair opportunity. It doesn't mean that you're going to all of a sudden get the right of way over everybody else, but you're going to get a safe opportunity to get into the traffic flow. And I think that sort of as an interim measure, that's something that we really need to look at. Now, obviously, the other 2 junctions around the boats are being, you know, the roads to go to the other 2 round the boats, one by Hurley's and the one down by King's. Those are going to make a good difference, you know. And I say make a difference initially, because anytime you put in some additional structures and features, you do get a benefit. But, of course, the other big animal in the room is that we're importing cars. So as soon as we get past those and people get used to that and we import another couple of 100 cars, the likelihood is we're going to be back to square one.
Sure.
Which is
you
why...
support a moratorium or at least a reduction in the number of monthly imports?
Well, what I would say about that is that we need to start to look at what I call the low-hanging fruit. We need to, first of all, we need to get the public transport system in place.
Yeah.
I also think that as we seem to be set for the east-west arterial road, we need to push on with getting that up, not only for the sake of the road itself, but what the road represents. The road represents an opportunity for communities to be developed in that area. You know, we could have a high school up there. We could have a courthouse. We could have the amenities that people are coming into Georgetown to get could be in that direction, which means that people coming from East End and North Side have a place to stop off. They don't have to get into the choke.
Indeed.
And us in Red Bay, maybe we're going to turn left and go towards that direction instead of always going to the right. So I think the longer term is that we need to think in terms of communities. Chicken and egg, obviously, public transport system, I think is one of the things that we need to look at and get that done. And once we have that in place, then we can look at other things. Because as it is today, if you start talking about restricting cars and so on and so forth, I mean, how are people going to get around? You know, we just don't have a culture of public transport, and we've got to develop and evolve into that culture to make that work.
On public transport, do you support not only, of course, an increase in the number of vehicles, transport, whether it be buses or minibuses or shuttles, but do you also subscribe to more of a code of conduct amongst all of the drivers? Because it seems to be, in large cases, we have the infrastructure, but it's a little bit like the Wild Wild West. There is very little control structure, and that, of course, has to make organizing public transportation difficult.
Yes, of course, absolutely. Public transport, by the very nature, it means that there's someone there whose concentration and whose emphasis is on public transport. And it's difficult to kind of engender that when you have a private sector only, and you don't have one bus company, but you have multiple individuals who are trying to run a little business, right? It's really, really difficult to run that type of system into a really productive and well-organized public transport. We're gonna have to find a way of making these things come about so that you have the kind of structure and to the system to ensure that it works. I mean, one of the things that you could do is you could have a company where existing people who are in the public transport, they could become a part of it.
Yeah.
You know, that's one thing. The other thing is
sharing it with the private sector and not necessarily making the public service carry all the load.
That's right. And then you're doing more of a regulation job then for public transport as opposed to actually doing
the operational side of it.
That's right.
I know you're going to have to leave us soon, so I want to jump on to some of the other topics, although hoping you're going to be able to come back and give us more detail another day. But I saw that you were also talking about of significant interest, healthcare. What's your plans on the healthcare?
Healthcare is obviously one of those issues that is near and dear to my heart. We for a long time we see the escalating cost of healthcare as we get older. The difficulty is that it becomes worse. People who are reaching 65 and kind of getting in that retirement mode, at the worst time possible, they're facing escalating healthcare costs. I think what I support is that at least for persons who are over 65 and persons who are under 18 and still in school, I would like to see at least a heavily subsidized program there for health insurance, so that they're just not left out in the cold. You hear some horror stories where people, they're in their retirement and they maybe make $1,600 a month out of their retirement benefits, and then they're forced into sometimes $1,200 for health insurance. So that's not right. We've got to take care of the people who have really worked hard in this country to make it what it is. And of course, when you start talking about people, the kids, I call them kids, but people under 18, that's our future. So we need to take care of them as well.
Right. Well, they say a country can be judged by how we treat our young and our elderly. So I definitely think I understand where you're coming from in relation to that.
If I could pick up on something else you said, certainly about building communities in Red Bay is important to you. And building those communities, you also recommended decentralizing Georgetown by moving some of the businesses that are creating the traffic, that vehicles are on their way into town every morning and out of town every evening, moving some of those businesses obviously out of town, potentially in Red Bay, which could also lead to job creation, which I'm sure is also on the lips of your constituents. Talk to us about your views there.
Yeah, job creation is obviously a big thing for all of us, and for our children and for young people coming out. But also, I would say it this way: it's important for everybody in the workplace. Whether you're just entering the workplace or you've been in the workplace for a while, we need to ensure that we create and provide opportunities for movement, as well as to get into the workplace, as well as movement in the workplace. And one of the things that I believe that is barring that to some extent is that the way that the work permit renewals are handled isn't conducive to opportunities. If you look at work permit applications and renewals, it kind of happens at the end of the cycle of a 1 year or 2 year permit.
Yeah.
And there's a short window there where they're, 2 weeks in advance of the expiry, they're moving towards renewing the work permit, they're advertising. But you think of it from the perspective of somebody in the workplace already, it doesn't give them very much opportunity to get and apply for that job.
Right.
What I'm suggesting really is that we should pull that whole process forward by 6 months.
Okay.
The reason why, clearly, if it's advertised 6 months in advance, you might be in an existing job, and you could say, well, hey, there's a job that I think that I would like. And you get an opportunity to dust off your resume. I do work contracts, job contracts all the time,
Right.
labor contracts. And every contract nowadays has a 3-4 month period in which you have got to give notice.
Right.
So,
why not take advantage of that notice period by obviously informing the public,
Exactly.
Caymanians in particular,
Exactly.
that a job position may very well be coming available. I think that's fantastic.
Yes, I think it's the right way to go. I mean, the idea of opportunity is there in the law. We just got to make sure that it works as an opportunity. I always say it this way: if I told you to go outside right now, there's $1 million in my car. You got 2 seconds to get there. You say, "Oh, what a good!" Then you say, 2 seconds? I can never make it.
Yes, that's
Right? But if I told you 5 minutes to get there, you say, "Wow, now I got an opportunity because I got time." Time is directly, and it's an important element and opportunity, and we must not forget it. We must make sure the systems work.
Absolutely. Well, I tell you, that sounds like some very palliative, if not, again, low-hanging immigration reform, real immigration
Right.
reform that has meaning and certainly would have impact in terms of creating opportunities, particularly for Caymanians being aware of positions and then perhaps even moving up the career ladder themselves. That's terrific. In Red Bay, and having some experience in Red Bay once upon a time, I'm delighted to see that they're starting to, you talk about the roads going in. Obviously, roads are a pathway to commerce. And
Right.
thankfully, we're starting to see a lot of commercial development in Red Bay. But still waiting on the list is housing, whether it be for new residents wanting to move into to Red Bay or otherwise. What are your views on what is very quickly becoming a housing crisis in this country, but certainly also affecting Red Bay?
Certainly, as you can see, that the population density in Red Bay is quite tight, and at some point you really got to look at every constituency and say how much more can it really hold. Because ultimately that traffic that's in Selkirk and Victory, that's got to come out onto the road. They've got to make their way onto the road to do the Shamrock, to do whatever needs to be done.
Yeah.
So there is the issue about density load that we need to look at. I think, though, that as we look at developing additional housing, we've got to think in terms of that east-west arterial road and look at finding some land, using land in that area to develop and so that you can have your population spread out a bit and have other services. I like the fact that, Tim Hortons is in Red Bay and the jerk chicken and Popeyes, it's great,
And it's open those early hours,
yes,
early birds.
Yes, that coffee, man, that coffee and those donuts,
yeah,
right?
It's fantastic.
So we're doing, on that level, we're certainly appreciative of those amenities. I see Red Bears there having their enjoying these things. And again, opportunities to me doesn't only mean the opportunity to get employment by being employed by someone. I think that many Caymanians want to be entrepreneurs. And we do a little bit towards it. You can do micro business stuff there, but I think even that we need to expand upon so that people can have this opportunity to be, live their best life.
Absolutely.
And to
again,
thrive.
the commercial development in that area is going to create the space where those micro and small businesses can organically develop.
That's right.
Maybe with a little help. Finally, again, because we've got about 4 minutes remaining, I want to touch on a very important issue. You talked about commerce. You talked about job opportunities. You talked about real tangible immigration reform. All of those representing opportunities for Caymanians. But a foundation to those opportunities is education. Your views on getting Caymanians workforce ready and able and capable to take those jobs that are there for the picking, lack of a better word.
Yes, absolutely. You talk about foundation, and obviously the foundation to success is education. Clearly, we're moving into a completely different era now, and it's very disappointing that 70% of the children leaving primary school, going into high school, aren't reading to standard. That's horrible, a horrible record. We've got to work on that. We've got to sort it out. Beyond that, what I see happening is that, and I think that it's one of the issues, is that we don't have early childhood education in the right kind of structure. I think that needs to be worked on so that we can get kids in there early and they can start to evolve into just socializing, really. You hear horror stories of kids going into primary one, they call it, and they're just not ready for it.
Yes.
So we need to make them ready for school so that when they get school, they can move forward. You also see a statistic there where they say teachers spend less than 50% of the time teaching. Now, that's a horrible statistic. You think about it, if you were in this super successful system, then great, but we're not. We're in it's a spiraling downward.
Yes.
And not to have teachers teaching less than 51% of the time in the actual work of teaching is not good. So we got to figure that out. There's a systematic problem there. We got to figure out what is happening there.
All right.
And then,
I hate to interrupt, but we got about 2 minutes, 20 seconds remaining. I know you have your first a public meeting coming up. I want you to talk about that and provide us some closing remarks.
yes, thanks a lot. We have a meeting coming up at the Sailboat Club on the 29th of March, which is Saturday, coming in at 7 p.m. And I'd love for all of my Red Bay folks, and I'm sure there'll be others as well who come out to listen and hear a little bit more about my plans and thoughts about what I have on mind for Red Bay. That a big part of it is that we want to have that constituency office in place there in Red Bay. We haven't had it. We need to have it, and I am going to put that there so that we have that connectivity between the MP and the constituents. And I look forward to seeing the various members of the constituency. They're canvassing, so we're going to be knocking on some doors, and look forward to the 30th of April and to being elected as the MP for Red Bay.
Here we go. I
Indeed.
like that.
Well, certainly, again, I want to thank you, Mr. Philip B. Banks, independent candidate for the constituency of Red Bay, obviously seeking your vote in the April 30th general election. But certainly, I think you've made a fabulously good use of the time spent here, and we would certainly very much like the opportunity, if it fits into your very busy schedule, undoubtedly, to have you back as our guest in studios. With 55 seconds remaining, just give us the date and time of that next public meeting so that, again, they say to teach us to repeat.
29th of March, which is Saturday coming at 7 p.m., Sailboat Club. That's down at Selkirk.
Right.
Don't get confused. The Sailboat Club is off Selkirk. And look forward to a meeting with constituents and others who want to hear a little bit more about my message and what my thoughts are. I want to do it kind of more almost like a sort of a Q&A type thing.
Absolutely.
And thank you guys for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to coming back on.
But I was going to say, pardon the pun, but I know you got to run, but we hope forward to seeing you again soon.
Absolutely. 59 minutes past the hour of 4 o'clock. We're going to pause, check in with the BBC News, but keep it locked. When we come back, Jordan Rivers from West Bay North will be our guest right here only on Straight Talk.
Bobo.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive
A
winds.
search and recovery operation.
race against time.
An imminent threat.
Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. Bobo FM. We're making Bobo FM bigger and better. We've got a brand new frequency with even more power. Retune your FM radio to 103.1 now. This is Bobo FM, the home of the BBC World Service, the most trusted news source in the world. Now in our new home of 103.1 FM. This is Bobo 103.1.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here.
More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
For business, they say location, location, location. But really, there's no better location than right here, right now on your mobile phone or laptop. Buy and sell your pre-owned gear where the island is searching online. Buy and sell on ektrade.com. That's ektrade.com.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. Powered by Health Services Authority, the home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm David Harper with the BBC News. Sudan's military leader says the army has regained full control of Khartoum from its rival, the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan landed in the capital at the newly recaptured airport. Barbara Platter-Usher reports.
People are cheering in celebration in central Khartoum. Those unwilling or unable to leave the capital described abuse and hunger during 2 years of RSF occupation. But the army advanced swiftly after recapturing the presidential palace in the heart of the city last week. Today, it secured the airport, which is also in the city center. And now, Sudan's top general has announced the army has full control of the capital. The focus of fighting is now expected to shift to Darfur in the west. But the conflict looks far from over. Both sides are backed by foreign powers who've poured weapons into the country, and international efforts to broker peace have failed.
President Trump has announced that the United States will charge a 25% tariff on all foreign cars imported into the country from the 2nd of April. Broadcasting live from the Oval Office, Mr. Trump signed an executive order, which he said would help the U.S. car industry to grow and reduce car prices.
This is very exciting to me. This is the automobile industry, and this will continue to spur growth like you haven't seen. Before I was elected, we were losing all of our plants. They were being built in Mexico and Canada and other places. Now those plants largely have stopped and they're moving them to our country.
Democrats in Congress have been grilling top security officials on how planned airstrikes in Yemen came to be discussed in a group chat that included a prominent journalist. The White House has continued to insist that the messages were not classified. From Washington, here's Gary O'Donoghue.
Well, what you've seen today is a massive attempt to push back on the messaging on this story, saying that there were no classified details released in those conversations, attacking the journalist involved, calling him a Trump hater and a sensationalist, and really an attempt to fight back on this story, which is proving to be a massive distraction for this administration. And this really is the first time that they've been on the back foot over a story, and it's a problematic one for them because it deals with national security. That goes to the core of what Republicans and Donald Trump say they stand for, a strong national security policy.
Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, is to go on trial for allegedly plotting a military coup. The Supreme Court has ruled there's enough evidence for the case against Mr. Bolsonaro and 7 of his allies to go ahead. He denies trying to block the inauguration of his successor, President Lula, calling the accusations unfounded and a personal attack. He never publicly acknowledged losing the 2022 election. Thousands of his supporters stormed government buildings after Lula took office. The trial is expected later this year. World News from the BBC. Turkey's main opposition leader says protests will continue nationwide until Istanbul's mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu, is released. Özgür Özel told the BBC that a major demonstration is planned in Istanbul on Saturday to kick off the party's campaign to make Mr. İmamoğlu the next president in 3 years' time. Mr. İmamoğlu, seen as President Erdogan's main political rival, was arrested a week ago on corruption and terror charges. The presidents of France and Ukraine, Emmanuel Macron and Volodymyr Zelensky, have said Russia cannot dictate the terms of a lasting peace with Kiev and must accept a 30-day limited ceasefire without conditions. Speaking in Paris, Mr. Zelensky accused Moscow of lying about the outcome of talks in Saudi Arabia, where the US brokered a Black Sea ceasefire. Mr. Macron stressed that it was too early to consider lifting sanctions on Russia. Lithuania says it is searching for 4 American soldiers who went missing during military drills in the Baltic country. The Lithuanian army said it had located the Hercules armoured vehicle that the 4 soldiers had been operating during a training exercise. The Defence Minister, Dorvile Shakaliene, said the rescue operation was ongoing.
There is a really very complex search and rescue operation going on at the moment. It's going to take some time, but we would like to reiterate that there is certainly no confirmation that any soldiers have died.
The Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has said his government is preparing to temporarily suspend the right of asylum for migrants. Poland is facing a wave of arrivals of migrants across its eastern border. Spain's Supreme Court has ordered the government to take charge of more than 1,000 unaccompanied young asylum seekers who are currently being housed in overcrowded conditions in the Canary Islands. The court granted the central government in Madrid 10 days to transfer the children from reception centres. BBC News.
Views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon. Of course, welcome here to Cayman Crosstalk. The number to call here are Straight Talk. Oh, my God. I told you. Listen, man, it's like, how many years of that? We did that.
That was a while ago.
It's ingrained. 745-2626. So, Austin, just before we start our interview with this awesome young man that's coming in the studio, I really want to give a shout out, right?
Yes.
I think it's good old days food.
Yes.
No, I think it was Mr. Clinton, if I got it right, and what was it? Sanchuana. These there were two couples behind us. But the food last night was awesome.
You were referring to your ACT meeting?
The ACT meeting.
Yes.
I had at least 2 plates, worked on 3.
Oh, terrific.
Even the cookies were awesome.
Wonderful.
And I don't really indulge too much in the sweets, but I couldn't resist last night. So just want to give them a plug. Good old days food. And again, you got to give them a visit. I think it's somewhere there between Mango Tree and Automotive Art. I got to exactly pin it down. They brought the food to us.
Once you pass Cotton Club on the left-hand side, just before you get to Automotive Art, that's his location.
Sounds like you know.
Well, look at me. I haven't missed a few meals.
I didn't get the size for nothing.
Yeah.
No, honestly, go give it a try. Good old days food. It was really, really awesome. The festival, the chicken, the cookies.
All right.
Everything was perfect.
Terrific. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and thank you to Mr. Clinton. Yes.
And
all right.
And St. Joanna.
And St. Joanna. Quite right. Well, we're moving right along. Obviously, just having a great guest from the constituency of Red Bay. Now moving to the constituency of West Bay North. It is our pleasure to welcome in studios, running with the Cayman Islands National Party, Mr. Jordan Rivers. Jordan, good evening, and thank you for choosing Straight Talk.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit, Jordan, about yourself. Since we have some time together this evening, Jordan's going to be our guest all the way until 6 o'clock. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, what made you decide this is the time to run for public office. Talk to us. And, of course, specifically your constituents.
We always got to say here in Cayman, it's like, I know who your mom is, your dad is. And
you're stealing my thunder already.
You see what I mean?
Just letting you know.
You just don't know when to quit, boy, I tell you.
No, it's all right. It's all right. That's what made you guys successful politicians, you see.
Yeah.
So what's beautiful about this is that you all have known me my entire life, so it's a really comfortable setting to be here this evening talking with you guys.
Yes.
And you all have specifically seen me matured and grew up in the political scene from a very young age. So thank you all for having me on this evening. I really appreciate that.
See, all those mornings of driving to school, listening to crosstalk, whether you wanted to or not, subliminally, it was educating. You're not putting a message in your mind saying, this is going to be the future leader of the Cayman Islands.
They paid off, trust me.
Terrific.
And I got to a point where I was so addicted to that, too, that I couldn't go a morning without listening to that.
Beautiful.
All right.
Flattery will get you everywhere. We love you.
I'm learning already, So, for those that don't know me, I'm a 28-year-old from the district of West Bay. My name is Jordan Rivers. I grew up in a very politically inclined household. My father ran 2 terms, unfortunately unsuccessful. But he definitely, as they say in West Bay, he broke the mold on a lot of things over there. So I personally got involved around 11 years old, and it just kind of caught like wildfire, man. I've started to pay attention, work with my dad, and just move forward. I've been in the tourism business for a little over 15 years professionally now. So if we're going to talk about experience, I've got a lot of experience in that.
I would say so.
Right?
I would say so.
Beautiful Barker's Beach area, so I can tell you, when it comes to that, and I've on the campaign trail, I have made a lot of statements on this. There's not very many hills I'm willing to die on, because when you grew up in politics, you understand that there's a certain level of sacrifice and a certain level of compromise that comes with every decision that is made. But that's one hill I'm going to die on, is the unequivocal protection of Barkers.
Yes, that's wonderful.
I'm so proud of this guy. Listen to the way he's talking.
Oh, my goodness, I feel goosebumps already. And again, it's just, you're a breath of fresh air, Jordan, because you represent truly the next generation. We keep saying that, we're building a future for the next generation to carry the torch, because we're not going to live forever. Well, Ellio might say, speak for yourself. But certainly, we are encouraged to see you at the table. And let's pick tourism. Barkers, you want to save and support. Tourism is in the headlines. It's in the politics. It's going to be one of the questions largely linked to tourism, specifically cruise tourism, on the referendum. How important or is this topic? I would imagine West Bay North. A lot of your constituents, make their living in this area. What are your thoughts on the otherwise polarizing or divisive topic of cruise berthing and tourism in general?
Straight into it now, aren't we?
Oh yeah.
Notice
you said you know how we are, so don't be surprised.
I want you to note that I did not throw you there.
No, that's what I'm saying. I thought it was going to be you at first.
But I'll tell you what. Before you get into that, right? Because I want to give you a little chance to survive on this. When you did say you grew up in a household, politically inclined household, and you talked about your dad, but I also know your mom is the mean campaigner too.
Oh yeah. There is no Paul without Chelsea. Chelsea. That's a fact.
Say it again, young man.
There is no Paul without Chelsea.
There you go. All right.
Yeah,
Hear that, Paul?
She's pointing me, say it with your chest.
With your chest. As I push it out, say, yeah, that's right. And I'm asking you, I'm telling you. That's beautiful. I love to hear that. Now, one point. Back to the question at hand.
So what I can tell you is that I, as a person that's been in tourism for a little over a decade and a half, I know the fundamental values of stayover tourism and cruise tourism. They both play very integral roles in our economy and society, right? I can tell you personally now, though, I have seen a lot more financial benefit from stayover tourism. Where I have noticed that the benefit of cruise tourism is that's a quick capital injection into government coffers. Because whether they get off the cruise lines or not, government gets paid, and that's a good day for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? Now, if you're going to ask me now, because since I operate in a very environmentally sensitive location, that's where we're going to have a little bit of polarization on that. I do believe that we need to expand our cruise port. Specifically our port. When it comes to the cruise port now, it's a little bit up in the air for me, to be quite honest with you, and I have been listening to both sides. At the end of the day, I'm going to tell anybody, stay informed and make a decision off of the information that you are given. Do not always subject yourself to both sides, because both sides have relevant information. You, the person, have to decide where you're going to go, because I can't vote for everybody.
Right.
Right? So when it comes to that, I'm going to tell you straight up, I'm listening to both sides.
Right.
But I also know I can't always answer for Jordan Rivers now, and which is a very interesting thing. But I have a party to represent as well, too. So whether I feel one way or not, collective democracy has to reign at the end of the day. That's how you have a stable country. So even though I am taking both sides into account, I'm not going to give you an answer today.
Well, let me just stress to you and anyone else who might want to come in the studio, particularly candidates that are running. Neither my colleague or I are going to be trying to pressure anyone to give those answers. Really, we want to help you, facilitate you to get your message out to the public. And I think what you said is absolutely fair. I wouldn't even ask for more than that. You're basically saying we want you to go to the polls, make your decision, go gather the information, go to the polls, and vote. Let us know whether you want to move forward or not. I think that's a very fair answer.
Correct.
He's Paul the Lion Rivers' son. He's not a stranger to difficult questions, and as your mother said, push your chest out when you answer.
Yeah. No, that was a perfect answer.
You mentioned environment, obviously being very near and dear to your heart. Talk to us a little bit about your views on the environment, ways in which you think the environment could be better protected. Talk to us about your passion.
I thank you for that. I think it takes us actually having a lot more of a conscious effort when it comes to the decision-making process. As we've seen recently now, we've had issues with the EIA for the East-West Arterial being pushed forward, right? Yeah. And then if you listen to the headlines, they're talking about gutting it and all this. It's doom and gloom, which I get it. There's always two sides to the equation, right? For me now, I always ask the question, well, one, what's going to be the overall impact? And are we really going to get value for money in that? That's where I look at things. So and I'll take it back a bit more home to West Bay here for a second. As I mentioned earlier, Barker's is a super important thing for me. That's not only is it bread and butter, but it's where I would hope that every West Bayer has had at least one opportunity in their life to go out there and understand the true beauty of that area. So if we're going to talk about trying to create and facilitate either the sale or the development of that location, you and I are going to have some problems. It's as simple as that. As you all know full well, my father was in the news for that several years ago when they tried to do the exact same things. Unfortunately, it seems that we're finding ourselves back in that situation. That's just not good, prudent governance, if you ask me. I completely get that development is super important to this country. It has now become the third pillar of our economy because of the rate as to which we're developing. But what are we going to do when we run out of space? If we do not have sustainable development and we have not identified locations that need to be protected.
Right.
Barker's is one of those places that need to be protected. You have the Central Mangrove Wetland, you have the Pirate Reserves over on the Sister Islands. These are areas that we have culturally have some sort of significant importance to us. And if we're getting ready to put concrete and asphalt through that whole thing, what does that say about us as a people? What are our values?
Right.
Money can't be the be-all, end-all of it. So if you ask me, we haven't even created any kind of national park legislation in this country as of yet. That would be a great pioneer project to actually ensure that we have some framework and some balance on our books to say, because as we all know here, you all are past legislators yourselves, you know that in this country, we have the ability to compulsory acquire and compulsory purchase for the sake of development, but it's not balanced for the sake of environment. And now I'm the first to tell you, even though I am an advocate for the environment, I'm not a zealot, as I mentioned earlier. I understand compromise and I understand balance. But what I think is that we have pushed ourselves too far in one direction. We need to pull it back a second here, reevaluate it, and understand that this is just as important, because the people that we service in the tourism market do not come to the Cayman Islands for Miami. As expensive as that area is, they understand that they're going to get things cheaper there. So what does that mean? What does the Cayman Islands have to offer? Right. Our environment. And if we continue to destroy it, not only do we ruin our tourism product, but we also ruin our food source. And we are now going to soon be facing a major issue globally with food security. So if we can't even go and fish.
Yes, quite right. Let me just get some clarification on Barkers. Are you suggesting that Barkers should be preserved as either a national park or an eco zone, period, or is there room in your vision for some development mixed with an ecotourism or eco preserve?
Well, unfortunately, I would like to say that there is no room on it, but the decision has already been made for me. There is developments happening out in Barkers here right now. There is a multi-million-dollar villa that's out there. Now, the issue with that is that if you think that when you define your property boundary, right, most people think, well, this is as far as I'm affecting the environment. I'm sorry to tell you, there's a lot more factors that happen that you want to consider. Another 30 to 100 feet away from your property on all sides, that's where you're actually affecting, right? The same way, like if we build the east-west arterial road to the degree that we want to do it, you have to think of the resounding effects that it's going to have on the wildlife. You're going to have light pollution and noise pollution. The same thing happens. Nature works in perfect symbiosis with itself. It's humans that tend to be the disrupting factor, unfortunately. And we don't always take into account how much of an effect we have on the environment until we usually lose it. It's always in hindsight, right? So if we're going to look in the direction of ecotourism, there's nothing I can do about the house that's already there. I would say, listen, we need to take a stronger approach, because once you open those floodgates, it's just going to keep on happening. The government only owns X amount of property, and it's closer up by Salt Creek, whereas the larger private developers own the vast majority of that location. And you have a few smaller individuals as well. But if it's going to go, well, you allowed them to do it, why can't I do it? And this is where we continue on the track of unbridled development. We're not taking a hard stance, and this is half the issue now. We look to elect persons in this country to represent us on our behalf where we can't always have a voice. So if I am the person that's not willing to make that hard call, might be the politically unfavorable move, but guess what? In the long run, it may get me unelected, but who cares? I'm not there to be a career in that sense. I'm there to represent you. And if you see it fit that I've represented you successfully, put me back in there, and as long as I have that good track record, let's keep doing business together. But that is one area that I think every West Bayer will agree with you. Don't touch it. So a proposal I made to the government a few years ago, because this is not the first time I've had on this, and I can tell you, out of going there my entire life and working there for over 15 years professionally, it's amazing to see how this topic has now conveniently become brought back up. And a lot of persons are using this. So my question becomes is, where were you when it wasn't a hot button item?
Indeed.
Right? So going back on track, that's just a statement there, right?
It is. It's a statement of fact, though.
It is. You are correct. I'm there every single day. I know who comes in and out of those areas.
Yeah.
And I don't see a lot of persons that I'm seeing now.
Sure.
So it is what it is.
Yeah,
but
they do come out of the woodwork, don't they?
And that's the word. They come out the woodworks.
You mentioned the east-west arterial and the development for it. You also said that, I think, to paraphrase, you're an environmental activist, but you're not an environmental zealot. The east-west arterial road needed, arguably, for those who live anywhere east of Red Bay and onwards. But there are genuine questions over the wetlands, the mangrove forest, things that obviously protect our environment against natural disasters like hurricanes that we see every year. What are your thoughts in terms of that necessary commercial infrastructure against how do you balance it with your views and passion for the environment?
So I'm going to attempt to tackle that twofold. You made a very valid point, which I think people need to think of. We're an island in the Caribbean that's in the hurricane belt. Mangroves are an essential water buffer and regulator when it comes to mass influx of wind and storms, right? So if we keep on destroying that now, what do you think is going to protect us in the long run? I completely agree and sympathize with the rest of the Caymanians from the easterly districts. I understand their plight. I say I understand it. I really don't understand it because I don't have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to go to work. For the past 15 years of my life, I've worked in West Bay.
Right.
So I get up, go take care of horses, and go to the beach. I don't have traffic issues.
Terrific.
Right? So I completely get that I may not understand what they're going through. What I can tell you is that they have to look at it from this perspective. We're going to have to move forward with that, whether I like it or not, because they need some sort of relief. But understand this, just because it's happening now does not mean that the persons that were in there previously, and I'm talking about Parliament, they knew where these problems were. If they actually had the fortitude to go and put in a comprehensive ground transportation system and upscale how we handle traffic in this country, we wouldn't be having this. But you can easily say, well, they might have just left it so they could sell you the solution. That gives me two answers now: incompetence or corruption, or some combination of the two. So even though we are in the situation now where we need it, and I don't disagree, we need it. So you're not going to see too much kickback from me. I'm just going to ensure that if I have any say about it, I'm going to ensure that we get the most environmentally conscious version at the cross-section of the most cost-effective for the country. Because the last thing I want to see now is another government project that goes well over budget and not on time. We've had too much of that. And if you all feel free to enlighten me and educate me on a single government project that has gone under budget.
None.
Okay, thank you very much.
And the other on-time thing, certainly where it relates to roadworks, nothing.
Nope.
Never have we, in the history of Cayman government, ever built a road on time. Ever.
Yeah, correct. And if you really want to get into some juicy bits of information, if we want to talk about how insider trading works globally, Cayman doesn't have a massive stock market that we partake in.
Right.
Development is our insider trading in this country. So I'm not going to call any names, but what I am going to say is, if you wonder why things run over budget and not on time,
that might be the cause. You're trying
that
to
might be the cause. That might be the cause.
Yeah. Just a suggestion.
Throwing
that up in the air.
If you're not fixing problems, you're finding ways to insert yourself into the profit streamline. It's as simple as that.
Indeed. You know what? We talked about it earlier on, having goosebumps. Really, thrilled at what we're hearing. I'm encouraged at what I'm hearing from you, Jordan. Not only coming from someone of your age demographic, suggesting you have an eye on the present, but also an eye on the horizon. And none was I more impressed with your long-term view on food security. Environment and agriculture go hand in hand. Agriculture, an opportunity to grow that which we eat. We have acres upon acres upon acres of undeveloped, otherwise arable land that we could be doing something with. Talk to us about your thoughts on agriculture and how important it is to the long-term survivability of the Cayman Islands.
So, that's the key word there, the long-term survivability of the Cayman Islands. Because one thing, you can go for 3 days without water, but you're still going to die if you don't have no food, right? So I've always noticed one thing about Cayman is that we're always in a really good financial situation. Right. We don't have a money-making problem. We have a spending problem. We have a fiscal accountability problem in this country, right? We have a lack of transparency problem in this country. We got short memory. And there have been people that have said the electorate is like goldfish, which come on, guys, but like, if that shows you, if that's how you think about the electorate, what are they doing for you in your best interest? But to be more on the topic, even if we did not want to use our arable lands for agriculture, why have we not created trade relations regionally? Okay? We have Jamaica, we have all of South America. I just came back from Costa Rica in November, and I don't speak a lick of Spanish, but I tell you, that's one country I would move to because they understand what their product is and they're extremely environmentally sensitive. You can't take down a tree in your backyard without calling the government. That's how much they're on, because they understand that when they get to the point where they reach where we have reached as a country, they already have all the facets in place. So there is no question about how they're going to move forward, right? So we have all these amazing locations that we could actually work with, but yet we're still hog-tying ourselves to the U.S. market. Now, granted, I can understand and I can fully appreciate international pressures from both the U.S. and the U.K. when it comes to food security and control over the Western market. I get that. But a little bit of legislation, a little bit of political maneuvering can say, listen, we're still going to take from you, but we want to facilitate and trickle in something a little bit more closer to home. That's going to help a lot with price control now. And this, I know we're not talking about this today, but I'm going to have to plug this in. No one has the magic fix for cost of living. What I can tell you is if you start to fix your food problem, you'll start to lower the cost of living because fuel is consumed in that. Absolutely. So if we start bringing from closer locations, it's going to cost less, or at least we think it would.
It's like we're reading from the same handbook.
We certainly
I'm definitely in agreement with you on that one. So what do you think about the possibilities of being even in a position where government, like you said, we don't have a problem with money, we have a problem with spending it. What do you think about being able to even purchase farms in those areas?
I don't know. I don't understand why we haven't done that.
Like, well, yeah.
That makes the most sense.
Touch me.
Let's.
Hey, I like this guy.
Let's talk.
I knew you would.
Let's talk sense for a second, right? Yeah. Cayman only has X amount of land mass, right? And we are at sea level, so obviously we have a lot more impact with salt, right? A lot of these areas have a lot of mountains, a lot of fresh air, a lot of green and rich and virgin soil. So guess what? The other difference is the Cayman dollar is stronger than most of those countries. So if we enter into governmental negotiations and saying, hey, we're going to employ your people over there because we're not going to send our people there. So you have some actual injection.
Just maybe some of the management, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, okay, yeah. Let's actually work with that. I like that. So that we're enhancing each other as we go along, right? So when it comes to that now, they're doing all the production for us, and hopefully, if you get it really good, we get it at a really good fixed cost.
Yeah.
Right, because we're doing that level of business with them. Guess what? Now we have a couple shipping companies. We can send them once a week, once a month, however we see that is most feasible and economic, while we're working with the private sector. That's why it's called a public-private partnership, and the country benefits from that. Hey, just a crazy thought. You throw in a little bit of consumer protection along the way, and everybody's happy now, right?
Just a crazy thought, indeed. We've got to pause and take a short commercial break, but we are having a truly enlightening conversation. Wouldn't you agree?
I totally agree, and he talks about the environment. I don't know what to say except that he's definitely a breath of fresh air today because he's had some wonderful ideas, and we're definitely on the same page when it comes to the agriculture.
Absolutely. We are hosting, of course, in studios, brilliant young man indeed. Couldn't say it better myself, representing the Cayman Islands National Party in the constituency of West Bay North. Mr. Jordan Rivers is our guest. We have to pause, take a short commercial break, but more enlightenment still to come right here only on Straight Talk on Bobo 103.1 FM.
The robe is as tall as the sky. And he said, what do I have? I said, I can draw. He said, what he deposited in me is more than drawing. That if I can follow him, he's going to announce me to the world. So I woke up. I started crying that, give me that thing. I want to be announced to the world, please. But it's, dreams are funny. At times you're going to have a dream. You won't even understand that what kind of dream is this? It's not saying anything about my life. It's just a dream.
But after that first visit, there were more. A figure kept coming to Hakeem and started teaching him artistic skills in his dreams, giving him detailed instructions about the best way to create a severed hand or mold plaster onto a human face. It was all very odd and seemingly random until Hakeem was suddenly asked to use these skills in real life.
I happens to be in a group. We formed a group in a church. So each person has to be assigned to a particular thing.
Recycling Day. Join Cayman Turtle Center in embracing sustainability and protecting our beautiful islands. Reduce waste, recycle right, and drop off your recyclables at convenient locations across Grand Cayman. Every small action makes a big impact. At Cayman Turtle Center, we're committed to protecting marine life and growing sustainably. Let's inspire change for our turtles, for our oceans, for Cayman. Visit turtle.ky to learn more. Together, we can keep Cayman green.
Join Capella Music Festival for the annual Soundbites Charity Dinner on Thursday, March 27th at Mykonos State Club in benefit of Loud Silent Voices. Hosting special guests, Gramps Morgan and author Dr. Annabelle Manalo Morgan. Tickets are $195 CI for a 3-course dinner, wine, and a welcome cocktail. Enjoy musical entertainment, special guest attendees, and after-dinner dancing. Purchase your Soundbites dinner tickets now at CapellaMusicFestival.com.
Insurance matters. It gives you the confidence to live life as you should, knowing you're protected. As a leading local insurer for over 25 years, Island Heritage has a consistent track record of providing best-in-class customer service with quick and efficient claims processing. This means insurance you can rely on when you need it most. The Island Heritage way. Visit us online at islandheritageinsurance.com today to learn more about our home, contents, motor, marine, and commercial insurance products. Go on and live your life. With Island Heritage, you can.
When it comes to weekly meal prep, I trust Kirk Market to provide the best value for quality proteins. The butchers at Kirk Market are super helpful. They always slice my steaks perfectly. Kirk Market has everything I need for healthy and flavorful protein-packed meals. From lean cuts of CAB choice beef, tender CAB prime beef, the juiciest pork, and all-natural hormone-free poultry, to their seafood section with everything from fresh local snapper to omega-3 rich salmon. I choose Kirk Market for the highest quality proteins to support my healthy lifestyle. Kirk Market. Eat well, live well, and discover a world of choice.
Across Cayman on FM, online, and on your smart speaker. This is Bobo 103.1, powered by Health Services Authority, committed to caring for you.
Cassava flour, like
Okay. Like a starchy kind of. Yeah,
yes,
got you.
starchy kind of, yeah. So when you turn it, it's become harder.
And they were happy with your work.
Man, I was just jumping. Man, I just performed magic, and people started shouting in the church. How can they do this? It looks so real. So that's how I started.
So from doing these effects for this presentation at church, little by little you got more work, and eventually you broke into the film world, into Nollywood. How did that happen for you?
Yeah, it's not easy to gain into Nollywood. You have to belong to an organization. I didn't have money, so I was tired.
Reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
And welcome back, Cayman, to more Straight Talk here on Bobo 103.1 FM and simulcasting live on YouTube and Instagram. And as my colleague optimistically likes to say, soon come on Facebook as well. Apologies to our listening audience. We had somewhat of a technical blip there, both coming out of our last segment and coming back in again. Hopefully, those gremlins will go away and they won't come back. But continuing our fantastic conversation with Mr. Jordan Rivers, candidate with the Cayman Islands National Party for the constituency of West Bay North. We've touched on such poignant topics such as the environment. We talked about immigration. We talked about agriculture. We talked about tourism. Certainly not afraid of the difficult questions. He faced a very difficult question right out of the gates, and I thought you did a fantastic job. Obviously, another big issue, certainly immigration and reform, what that means for opportunities for Caymanians. What are your thoughts on this issue?
So, as a person that is a budding business owner, as whether my parents like to think that way or not, I have managed their company for a number of years. I know they're giving me the side eye. I completely understand, and granted, my business model doesn't necessarily rely on heavy immigration policies when it comes to the importing of labor. So I'm not directly affected by that. We have done it over the years, but it's been on a very small scale. But I do understand that Cayman has reached a point in its development where there's so much business here that not every single Caymanian can find themselves in a role. How I look at it on the other hand of that is that, and I think we can all agree here, that unemployment only affects Caymanians, because if you're not employed in this country, you're not going to be here. So what I think we need to do is, if we're going to have this high level, and it's not, the thing is, it'd be one thing if it was high unemployment with unskilled labor, but you have a lot of skilled individuals coming back from university with master's degrees that can't get a job in their own country. Right. I can remember, and you all remember more than me, when we actually used to bond scholarships from government to coming back and having a job here, but we've just kind of let it go all willy-nilly. So we need to look at that heavily here now. If we're going to actually have real, true, and earnest Caymanian involvement in the workforce, going to get to a point where you realistically have to legislate that and seriously take that stance and say, listen, we're not going to be an inhibitor for the development in this country when it comes to how immigration operates and how immigration benefits the country on a whole. Because government still gets revenue from work permits. We can't disagree with that. What we are going to ensure, though, is that our people have actual, true, and fulfilled involvement in as many facets of our economy for the jobs that are actually here, not the make-believe jobs that people be subscribing to sometimes, for jobs that are actually here. We need to decide what is it that we are focusing on. We understand we got tourism and financial services. There is a whole plethora of other businesses inside of areas like the special economic zone that these kids are going off to. But we don't, and I can tell you this as a fact, there are forums that are happening in those special economic zone areas where they're looking at things like robotics and rocket science and a myriad of other things. We have cryptocurrency that's become a huge facet. We control 60% of the global funds. And we're not teaching our kids that in school. That's the next generation of money, and we're not pushing on that, right? They're telling me straight up that government's just not participating in that. And that's a crying shame.
Which of course, is not 100% surprising. Even the money we have now, we didn't learn too much about that in school either. Yeah. But I like your way of thinking about, well, so tell us about persons that are going away. What are some of the specifics you think needs to be done to make sure that those persons can come back and get some jobs?
They need to. If we're gonna deal on just the government scholarship level for a second here, because it's government, right? So I got to start from that basis.
The royal we money.
Right, the royal we money. They have to be rebonded. Whether that is creating once again partnerships with the private sector, saying, hey, we have X amount of students going away that are studying this. We project that either 80 to 100% of them are going to be coming back with these degrees, and we can decide at that point now if they're going to go back for that. But when it comes to the in real-time training, because how do you expect for those students that have gone through the process, given up their time, given up their years, to go and get educated, but then you're going to tell them that they need experience to come and work for you? Where are they going to get the experience? That's where the private sector that has been allowed to come into this country and reap the benefits of tax neutrality needs to start paying it back. I understand you pay your fees to get here. I get that. But we have a certain way of dealing with each other in Cayman as Caymanians.
Yes.
And we need to ensure that they understand that too. It is, if you're going to be our people, you need to operate like our people.
But if I can save you a little heavy lifting, because I think you're absolutely 100% on the right track. But again, rather than reinventing the wheel, nowhere in the employment law, labor law, immigration law does it say anything about Caymanians requiring experience in order to enter the job market. It simply states if there is a Caymanian available with similar or level skills for a position, that Caymanian shall be, not must be, maybe, could be, shall be employed,
so
period.
Let me add this to you then. A law on paper without enforcement is as simple as that.
Yes.
A law on paper. And amongst the other things that we fall down on in this country, enforcement is another one of those things. Because it's just easier to say, well, and I can give you another good example. After the fact planning approval, right? You've already destroyed it. We may even institute a small fine on you, but keep on doing what you're doing. I can tell you one thing. If you're not playing by the rules one time, you're not playing by the rules ever again. And that's just my personal standpoint on that, because it shows me that you don't have the integrity or the honesty to play by the rules that we have instituted here, because you understand.
I hear that lion coming in.
I hear that lion.
Because you understand.
That chest pushing out too. Love it.
But because you understand that, what are they going to do to me? Get rid of me? Give me a little slap on the wrist? And that's really all we do. It doesn't take massacring an entire sector for them to get the point. Right. It only takes one or two, and I can promise you they'll get the point pretty quickly. I'm not here to try and be a bully about it. I'm just here to explain that if we do not abide by the laws that we have put down for ourselves, who do we think coming into this country is going to do the same thing? It's as simple as that. The reason people come here is because of our stability. But once you get inside and you see how it works internally, it's a facade sometimes. It's to the highest bidder, unfortunately. And yeah, I get it. But I'm going to plug the party here for a second. One of the guiding principles for us is that if it doesn't benefit our people, why are we going to do it? That's what we've lacked, is the fact, and then you're going to hear this in my campaign a lot. We have elected persons in this country that have made decisions for pockets, not for people. And that's half the problem now.
Hold on a second.
We got two. See, there it is. That definitely deserves a sound effect. That definitely deserves a sound. Well, we got 2 comments from WhatsApp. The first one, flowers while you're still alive. Wow, this young man gives me hope for the next generation. Another writer says, welcome to your guest, Jordan Rivers. I've watched this young man grow up, and wow, what a delightful young man he is. I know a big issue for the Rivers family has been their advocacy for disabled parking, sidewalks, and other specific requirements needed for disabled persons. Still today, we are nowhere closer to having proper sidewalks for wheelchairs. It's a sin to watch the many disabled people coming off the cruise ships, for example, having such a trouble to navigate around our country. I wonder if you can share perhaps some of his views on this troubling issue.
I just want you to indulge me, Austin. I want to just read 2 comments that had come into me earlier as well.
Sure.
One says, I gotta say, he's sounding pretty good.
Yes.
So, and the other person writes, great insights from the guest. He speaks very clearly. So again, I think there's a lot of persons out there, and I want to stress, just in case somebody's confused, you can't have a mouth talking that sweet without having a wonderful mind at the same time. So with that, go ahead. I think my colleague had asked you a question.
Yeah, the absolute lack of regard for the most severely disenfranchised persons in our community has been quite concerning. And I can show you that a lot of what you hear me talk about is not just what a perspective is. It's literally lived experience. You can't fake that kind of stuff. So when I see that, and I can tell you, when I can see that we have infrastructural flaws, where for the longest time we weren't even considering, hey, let's have some ramps, let's have some easy access for buildings. There's still many structures in the Cayman Islands that my brother can't access, and many persons for that matter. One of the most amazing things is that I have come across, and it's funny that this question was brought up because it was brought up to me very recently too. So if they're listening, I hope they're going to hear this, but I'm going to have to go and have a conversation with them pretty soon about it as well, is that there still are people we have always kind of, and this is the old habit we have in Cayman, where we kind of sweep things under the rug. We don't pay attention to it, hoping that it goes away. The issue with that is that the dust builds up and the carpet not flat no more. Well, it sounds like Mount Trashmore, but that's a whole other topic. The fact of the matter is, we are drastically behind when it comes to our development plan for how we're going to move this country forward. The systems for the planning authority are extremely outdated. I have yet to see them actually hold a true and honest regulatory meeting to update these things, and I can tell you why. No one's going to like that I'm going to say it. It's because there's a lot of special interest that's happening there, and I'm not going to call any names on that. But the simple fact of the matter is, if you are not making these decisions for the people, who are you making the decisions for? Who stands to gain the most with the outdated laws, right? But because of that now, persons like my brother, who has a hard enough time with his life, has to now go through these problems. We have to navigate these ourselves at the expense of ourselves. And nothing's wrong with if you have the ability to take care of your people, take care of them. But what I would hope that the government, in its genuine quest to really and truly and earnestly service its people, would look at these things with a clear mind and say, listen, that sidewalk looking kind of shabby. That road should really be fixed.
You know what? I'm going to cut you, but I'm going to cut you for good reason, okay? Because I want you to recover some of this ground and just really expose it. You have a brother that I think it's muscle dystrophy. Or,
muscular dystrophy.
And I have my youngest daughter's, special needs. I really want you to share a little bit of that story because there's a lot of people that need to hear that story and let you know that you can identify with the challenges that they're having. Tell us a little bit about that.
So about him.
About your brother and the challenges he have, and then we can move into. I think that helps to show us why you're passionate about some of these things as well.
So, and I didn't think I'll get a little bit personal like that today, but it's a necessary thing,
It's important.
So my brother has muscular dystrophy, and for those that don't know what it is, it's like not autoimmune. It's a muscle affecting disease.
Right.
So his body atrophies slowly over time. The biggest issue with that kind of stuff is that your heart is one of those things. So over time now, your immune system declines, and he's very dependent on the medication he needs. That's realistically what it is. It's one of those things where it's terminal, okay? And there's multiple different versions of it, so you may live longer if you have a lesser version, okay? But at the end of the day, it's terminal. So me being his twin, before we even had access to not even financial, just the finances to give him things like a motor-powered wheelchair, it was me. And now we have plenty of pictures where he's on my back and I'm carrying him wherever we got to go. Because that is how it was. Young parents with young kids, and one was just a little bit different. But thank God, God built me strong, gave me a big back, because that's all I ever did was just carry him. And just give me a second, because
No, that's fine. That's fine. I thank you for sharing the story, because I remember visiting you and your parents and seeing the challenges that you went through. But I think it's so important that the public knows that, because they're seeing one person up here that's eloquent, articulate, and very intelligent, but I really want them to see that there's a bigger heart, a stronger person than they can perhaps even imagine.
Indeed,
So
walk a mile in his shoes. He who knows it feels it.
You are stronger than a lot of people know.
Indeed.
And your entire family, but I'm talking about you right now. So thank you very much for taking the time out and sharing that story.
Well, we do appreciate it. Obviously, you've been knocking on the doors as part of the campaign trail, and we've talked about a number of arguably key national issues. But let's break it down to some of its smaller moving parts. When you meet and greet your constituents through West Bay North, what are some of the big issues on their minds?
A lot of them are fearing security for themselves. They see the rise in cost of living. So in West Bay North is a very interesting location. You're going to have your fluctuation of the middle class to slightly upper middle class. There's not really the strongest representation of upper class out there. So these are common, everyday working, hardworking people in there. So they want to ensure that, and as we know, the backbone of any country is its middle class, because the minute you lose that, you end up with countries like Haiti, where you have abject poverty and abstract wealth just everywhere, right next to each other, right? And the rest of the society decays. So the middle class is the real balancing act for that whole thing. And a lot of them are really worried about how are they going to secure a future for their children? How are they going to be able to afford to retire? How are they going to ensure that their children have the financial means and opportunity to be able to provide for themselves? Because the parents understand one thing: there's going to be a world without them at some point in time. How do I do the most for my child to ensure that when I am gone, they're okay? Because what you're going to have happen if you're unsuccessful at doing that here now, you're either going to have a child that's renting for the rest of their life and not having any kind of forward momentum, or they're going to inherit the family home at some point in time, and the cycle repeats, hoping that at some point that child has the understanding and the ability to turn that into something great. And that's not, at the core of that, opportunity is where that lies. And so and this is where it comes back to, you can have all the education, all the options, not all the options, all the education, all the desire, but if you don't have that opportunity, it's all for naught. And what we're seeing in Cayman is that we are accommodating to the world, and we've said this for years now. This is not something new for those that are listening. I've been around this block a good minute here now. We've been saying this for a long time. We have rolled out the red carpet of this country to the foreign investor, and that's fine. That has helped us advance fairly quickly. But what we failed to do was put that one caveat in there that's saying, yeah, you can do all this stuff and we're going to help you with it, but you're going to take our people along with you. So I say that to say this: on a local level, that's really what the biggest concern for people is opportunity and insurance that all their hard work is for naught. And Barkers.
Yeah.
And that's just a West Bay thing in general, but that's really what I'm seeing on the ground.
All right. Well, that's very encouraging. Now, obviously, you have follow-up meetings. You've got continued yard meetings and, of course, party rallies. Talk to us about some of those dates that might be coming up in the days ahead.
Okay, so my next meeting is April 2nd on Anderson Road near Cobalt Coast.
Okay.
All right, and anyone that knows that road in West Bay, once you're driving that, you can't miss it. It's a straight shot.
Right.
So that's where my next meeting will be. I have my chamber debate on March 28th at 7 p.m.
Okay.
March 28th, yeah.
Yeah, March 28th. So, right here. Oh, Friday, March 28th. Now, I guess I'll just plug my social medias at this point if anyone wants to get in contact with me and work. Because at the end of the day, you all have done this before, so you know full well there's a lot of people to meet, and there's never enough time to meet all of them. Right? So I can't, and there's 1,400 plus people in West Bay North currently. So let me tell you, I'm trying my hardest, but I want people to reach out if they're interested in what I got to say, if they like what I'm saying currently, and they want to know more. They want to see what the next generation has to offer. Because at the end of the day, I didn't appoint that for myself. It's just me being where I am and actually choosing to run. I was just fortunate enough that I was raised in a household that put me a couple steps ahead of my peers in some instances, to where now I saw that and I was like, wow, all these years, and there's not a single person in there that actually has a real, genuine representation, or the foresight, for that matter, to understand the desires of the next generation, to understand my desires and my peers' desires, and who comes after us. So I genuinely just got tired of it, and that's kind of how as part of the reason why I ended up running, was because I realized that, one, that's not taking place. So where is the opportunity going to come from? Where is the job security going to come from? Where are the options going to come from if we're focused on everything else that either makes them money or makes the country money or makes the government coffers money, but you're not investing in your people and the next set? So sorry for that. I'm going to get back on topic here. My email is jordan.rivers@nationalparty.ky. You can follow me on Facebook at Jordan Rivers for West Bay North. The Instagram handle is jordanrivers.wbn. And the...
So now I know you're a great speaker, but I'm going to tell you on radio now you got to repeat it once or twice.
All right. Well,
so
I'll
give all those URLs again.
Teach us to repeat.
Yeah. All right. So I'll hit him twice.
Hit him twice.
So the email is jordan.rivers@nationalparty.ky, and you can find all of our candidates that way. It's first name dot last name @nationalparty.ky.
Excellent.
The Facebook is Jordan Rivers for West Bay North, so that shouldn't be too hard to remember.
Nope.
The Instagram is jordanrivers.wbn for West Bay North. The WhatsApp channel is Jordan Rivers for WBN. You can contact me at 938-8668. I like this one. The YouTube channel is coming with all the videos. So that's where you can actually see my archives and stuff. I'm not a YouTuber, but I understand the need for that. That's where everything is archived, right?
Yeah.
You can check our website out at nationalparty.ky. You can go to the candidate tab, and then you can scroll down and find me, Jordan Rivers. And then once again, my next meeting is April 2nd, Anderson Road near Cobalt Coast at 7 p.m. You can find me this Friday at the Chamber of Commerce debate on Friday, March 28th, starting at 7 p.m. Just look for all the, by the way, for the Anderson Road event on April 2nd, you can just look for all the lights and music. It's not hard to find.
All righty. And I was going to ask you if you were bold enough to put your cell phone out there, and you did, but I only caught the first 3 digits. You want to give that number again?
Yes. 938-8668. That number again is 938-8668.
Very good. Very good.
Very good.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like my telephone number is 938-8668. Again.
That's right.
Get your pen.
And
938.
He won't be changing it after you elect him either.
No.
Stay his number.
Trust me.
So.
I contemplated getting a new number. At first I said, you know what? That gets too cumbersome. Let me just stick to one.
Keep it simple, buddy.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Well, again, Jordan, it's been an incredible treat for us. We don't have these kinds of conversations, particularly with young persons like yourself, every day. We have spent almost an eternity talking about and talking to young people, but I dare say not enough time talking with young people.
Correct.
And that leads me to an opportunity that I want to share with the listening audience. Jordan will be a regular feature here on Straight Talk going forward. We will have him again next week, Monday, ahead or in advance of your meeting in Anderson Road near Cobalt Coast. So
Wonderful.
We'll have another opportunity to remind the listening audience about that. But then, of course, almost on a weekly basis, all the way until I think the last appearance will be the 22nd of April, which is, of course, the week before the folks go to the polls.
That's the final stretch.
So you clearly have, planned it out very nicely. But more importantly, I think it gives us something to look forward to every week. And again, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and by all indication from our listening audience here today, they too have as well.
Thank you.
And we thank you for that. We have about 3 minutes remaining. I want to give you an opportunity, whether there's an issue you want to share, or, of course, an opportunity for some closing and or impactful remarks.
That's more time than I'm going to get for the debate on Friday, so thank you for that extra minute.
Yes, right. You remember who looks out for you.
That's what I was going to say. I mean, wise decision, first of all, in coming on this talk show.
Very, very wise.
Very, very wise.
Very wise.
That's almost like guaranteeing the election.
I tell you, that's what I'm thinking.
Wise, man.
So what I will say, and I'm glad that you think that we have it so well planned out, so I'll advise the public, find yourself a Chelsea in your life.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Because that's the only way this stuff gets done.
Yes.
I have a really good committee. They help keep me looking nice and great and on time and professional.
Oh, and women can do it.
Yeah, no, because they understand.
And your mom can do it.
What I will say with the time I have left, Mr. Moderators, already getting some practice in, to the wider Cayman Islands and to the next generation, we have seen the decisions of what experience has caused in this country and what the optics of experience looks like. If that is what you like, by all means, keep voting for it. I can tell you it's not what I like. That's why I decided to run, because I understood that we needed to go in a completely different direction for what we've been going for the past 25 years, at minimum. So stay informed, stay tuned, pay attention to who's coming at you, because like they always say, you can lie to all the people some of the time, but no, that's not how it is.
Yeah, something like that.
You can't lie to all the people all the time.
That's right.
And it's a simple fact. People will show you who they are.
Yep.
And you just got to pay attention. This is a very pivotal election cycle, because at the end of the day, I'm going to speak specifically to the next generation. Whether you are registered or not this time around, it is your country to inherit. Every bit of debt that we collect in this country, and it's going north of $700 million right now. Right? Keep in mind, we're sitting at what, a $1.2 billion GDP, and we have $700 million in proposed debt. That's pretty close, if you ask me. I would hate for another FFR action to kick in,
or another Ivan, or
anything. It's too close to the wire.
Yeah.
But that is what experience has gotten us in 25 years. Okay? So if you want more of that, keep on voting for that level of experience. What I can tell you that you'll get with Jordan Rivers, because he has people to answer to and a noose waiting for him if he messes up, is that the Cayman Islands National Party is coming with accountability and transparency and good fiscal management. We have a person, the leader of our party, that has managed a $50 billion company. So I don't think that a $1.2 billion enterprise that is Cayman is going to be that hard to manage. But you're going to get that transparency. You're going to get that accountability. You're going to get that fresh hope of persons that actually want to serve you, because that's who we are elected to serve. We're not here for the special interest. We're not here for the private investor. We are here for the people of the Cayman Islands.
All right, that's all the time we have for you tonight. But tune in on Monday for more Jordan Rivers on Straight Talk.
Bobo.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world. Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
The BBC World Service makes programs with a uniquely global perspective.
Enlighten us. Where do we start?
The latest world news and current affairs.
The very best in global arts and culture.
What has been happening on the financial markets today.
Social issues, political stories.
Everything was there in a way that I never heard before.
The BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation.
OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
For business, they say location, location, location. But really, there's no better location than right here, right now on your mobile phone or laptop. Buy and sell your pre-owned gear where the island is searching online. Buy and sell on ektrade.com. That's ektrade.com.
Across Cayman on 103.1 FM, online, and on your smart speaker. Powered by Health Services Authority. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo 103.1.
Hello, I'm David Harper with the BBC News. Sudan's military leader says the army has regained full control of Khartoum from its rival, the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan made the announcement surrounded by cheering soldiers. From Port Sudan, here's Barbara Pletasher.
General Fattah al-Burhan flew into that newly reclaimed airport, and he made this announcement from the historic Republican Palace. He said Khartoum is free, that palace being a potent symbol of sovereignty and political power. So this is a very big day for the army. It gives them a strategic advantage in the war, but the fighting is now expected to shift to the west, to Darfur, where the RSF controls very large parts, most of that region. And just this week, the army was accused of bombing a marketplace that killed dozens, possibly hundreds of civilians.
President Trump has announced a 25% tariff on all cars imported into the United States from the 2nd of April. He claimed the measure would spur growth in the US car industry and create jobs and investment. He said overseas manufacturers were looking to build car plants in high numbers in the US.
Before I was elected, we were losing all of our plants. They were being built in Mexico and Canada and other places. Now those plants largely have stopped and they're moving them to our country.
President Trump also said further tariffs will follow on the lumber and pharmaceutical sectors. The Trump administration has already imposed a 25% duty on steel and aluminium imports. Democrats in Congress have been grilling top security officials on how planned airstrikes in Yemen came to be discussed in a group chat that included a prominent journalist. The messages with precise times for when US warplanes and missiles would be launched have now been published by The Atlantic magazine. The Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has said inviting a journalist into the chat was a big mistake.
Nothing against journalists, but you ain't supposed to be on that thing. Look, I think the White House is looking at this entire thing. How did that journalist get on there? Why was this the appropriate? I think there'll be reforms and changes made, so this was not going to happen again. It can't.
Turkey's main opposition leader says protests will continue nationwide until Istanbul's mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu, is released. Özgür Özel said a major demonstration was planned in Istanbul on Saturday to kick off the party's campaign to make Mr. İmamoğlu the next president in 3 years' time. Mr. İmamoğlu, seen as President Erdogan's main political rival, was arrested a week ago on corruption and terror charges. The presidents of Ukraine and France, Volodymyr Zelensky and Emmanuel Macron, have said Russia cannot dictate the terms of a lasting peace with Ukraine and must accept a 30-day limited ceasefire without conditions. Speaking in Paris, Mr. Zelensky accused Russia of lying about the outcome of talks in Saudi Arabia, where the US brokered a Black Sea ceasefire. He said he expected Washington to ensure an unconditional deal after Moscow insisted on Tuesday it would go ahead once certain sanctions had been lifted. BBC News. The Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk has said his government is preparing to temporarily suspend the right of asylum for migrants. Mr. Tusk said the government would adopt the measure without delay. Poland is facing a wave of arrivals of migrants across its eastern border, which Warsaw thinks is a hybrid war tactic orchestrated by the governments in Belarus and Russia. Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, is to go on trial for allegedly plotting a military coup. The Supreme Court has ruled there's enough evidence for the case against Mr. Bolsonaro and 7 of his allies to go ahead. He denies trying to block the inauguration of his successor, President Lula, and says he's the victim of political persecution.
I hope to put an end to this today. It seems like there's something personal against me, and the accusations are very serious. They are baseless.
Mr. Bolsonaro never publicly acknowledged losing the election in 2022. Thousands of his supporters stormed government buildings after Lula took office. The trial is expected later this year. The Bolivian government has declared a national state of emergency due to months of severe flooding, which have killed at least 50 people and affected thousands of families. The move will free up more resources for the worst-hit areas. Senior police in Baluchistan say at least 6 people were killed on Wednesday in a spate of coordinated attacks in Pakistan's restless southwestern province. According to the French news agency, police accused gunmen of targeting bus passengers on the basis of their ethnicity. Chinese doctors have for the first time transplanted a pig liver into a brain-dead human recipient. The organ from a genetically modified miniature pig was inserted into the adult with his family's permission. The doctors say it functioned well and produced bile. The experiment was terminated after 10 days. While there have been several successful pig-to-human kidney and heart transplants, the liver's role is more complex.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo 103.1.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Straight Talk with your host, Austin Harris, and myself, Ellio Solomon. It is just about 6:06 here in the studio. Number to call if you want to get in, 745-2626. That's 745-2626. Austin, I don't know what to tell you, buddy. That was a great interview.
Oh, my goodness. I was blown away by it, Ellio. I was, as I said, genuinely, there were goosebumps in the beginning of that conversation.
Absolutely.
I felt so encouraged by his remarks. And again, as we pointed out many times before, obviously his parents trained him well.
No, they definitely trained him well. And, I don't even want to, I hope people understand, I don't want to even refer to him as a young man. And I think in some person's mind that might sound a bit disparaging. I think, listen to this individual. Listen, you can't talk, first of all, that eloquently unless you've got some great thinking. There's been a lot of thought that young man has been doing. And again, let me stop saying young man.
See, there you go.
That gentleman has been doing a lot of thinking.
Yes.
There's been a lot of thought going into what he's talking about. You don't get up here and just spew stuff like that. He's rolling off the tongue because he's been given that a lot of thought. There's been a lot of back and forth, and he has the experience there. That's why he can deliver it that way.
Yes.
And I just want to stress it. The gentleman is doing well. I wish him all the best. And again, as we've mentioned, he's going to be coming on here at least once a week.
At least once a week.
Between now and 30 April 2025.
That's correct.
And wishing him all the luck. I love the idea about the farming. That's something I've been chatting about too. I was like, we're reading from the same book here. But, the thing of it is, he talked about the younger generation, but he's not just doing things that's going to please the younger generation. He's pleasing people, our generation. I think a lot of things has just not happened in this country.
Yeah. And, I was also, pleased to hear him say that he's an environmental activist, has been all his life. But he's also not an environmental zealot.
Right.
And I think that is important because, that represents balance on the conversation. He acknowledges that traffic for persons living in the Eastern Districts is a significant concern, and therefore he stands not opposed to the East-West Arterial, but simply acknowledging that there are, options, ways in which to mitigate against environmental loss, particularly when we talk about potential devastation of the marine wetlands, things like mangrove forests, things that, protect us against wave and wind surge, which, of course, are commonplace during hurricanes. We acknowledge that climate change is real, whether you accept it or not. And again, I think he shows fantastic balance on both of those sides whilst understanding the need for commerce.
Not that I want you and I to get into a back and forth on this one, but, okay, I'm going to set the climate change aside for a moment, but here's what I'm going to say to you. Either way, whether a person is a climate change believer or not, there is a need to protect your environment.
Yes.
And to your point, I completely agree. What I like with this person is I'm hearing a balance here.
Yes.
I'm hearing a balance, when he talks about protecting Barcus. First of all, even me, whenever the West Bears would allow me in, if my passport was stamped to go to the Republic, I used to picnic there as a kid.
Yes.
And I really can't see the reason why we need to tear that down.
Not at all.
And to be able to preserve something like that is good. So being able to make sure that people coming here, and most important in my mind, the people who live here can actually remember this is an island and we want to be able to enjoy it. We want to do some of those things we did when we were a kid. I love the balance of wanting to protect the environment and at the same time being able to appreciate that, hey, listen, we got to also make some accommodations for a little bit of development.
Yeah.
I don't know. Great. There is no doubt in my mind, hearing him speak and on the topics he's spoken, that the gentleman has given a lot of thought to the things he wants to do and how he wants to go about it, wishing him all the best of luck.
No.
And again, I thank him for sharing his story. I know it put him a little bit on the spot, but I know the hardships that the family has been through, and in particular that young man, and all those things have only made him a much more mature person.
Yeah.
Regardless of what age he is physically sitting here, he's much older in his mind as well, and from his experience.
No, absolutely. I mean, and in the constituency of West Bay North, you know, the constituents have a lot of choices to choose from in that constituency, but by all indication, I see Jordan Rivers as a real contender in that constituency. And likewise, we got to also say a great big thank you to our first guest, Mr. Philip Ebanks, running as an independent candidate there in the constituency of Red Bay. I liked his thoughts on...
Well, let me say, he was ready to go.
I tell you that.
He didn't need us.
I tell you that. He had his Wheaties and his coffee in him. He was ready to rock and roll.
Oh, man.
We got the hi, how are you introduction. He just ran with that.
No, he was ready to go. Again, you can hear that this is... And to the example he gave, where someone was saying, you know, listen, I'm ready to vote for you.
Yes.
You know, you did something great for me. And he's like, no, but I want you to listen to my ideas, you know.
Yeah.
And you can see he's so passionate about making sure that he convey those ideas and share it with the public. And he wants to be elected for that based on the experience, the fact that he's proven that he can deliver.
Yes.
He wants to be, he wants to get elected on those things.
Yeah, and he's putting himself out there. You know, he wants to be seen. He wants to, quote unquote, press the flesh. He cited one of the criticisms that, again, in the past, former representatives were perhaps a little hard to get a hold of. Certainly, he promises to be different.
22 years of serving the public.
22 years in the public service, 18 of which in the police service. He left the police service, I think, as a superintendent in charge of the uniform branch. And then another 20 years in the private sector as an attorney. Whilst he may be lacking what some would say the parliamentary experience, I think life has given him quite a great advantage in terms of the job he now seeks.
I'm sure the law degree helps as well.
Well, the law degree certainly doesn't hurt. I was also particularly impressed with, you know, we hear a lot about, on the campaign trail in particular, about the need for immigration reform, but very few have actually thought that out to the point to what does that look like? And when we talk about, you know, opportunities for Caymanians, we really only know about a work permit going up for renewal when we read the compass 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you know, before that permit is expired. And of course, you get the opportunity if you're watching the classified ads. He's talking about starting that process much earlier, as much as 6 months before that permit expires, giving potential Caymanians an opportunity to either apply, to plan their lives, assuming, of course, they're already in another job, but they want to, again, elevate their opportunities and their career ladder. They want to climb it a bit further. I thought that was a very good recommendation. Certainly something that is worth, at the very least, as we say, ventilating further. So, again, you know, two really terrific candidates hosted here on Straight Talk tonight, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. As always, to all of the candidates, we want to hear from you. The window is closing. You know, the deadline is quickly approaching. By next week, it'll be April already, and that only gives you, 29 more days, if you will take it as that, in which to get 29. Your message out. So, you know, if you are a candidate or you are representing a party, whether an independent individual or perhaps you're, part of the campaign team, give us an email, host@straighttalk.ky, and let us help you get your message out to the people who would certainly be taking it to the polls on April 30th.
Yeah, and I'll use that, sorry, just to stress the point that I made during the interview there. It's not any gotchas. That's not what we're after. We're after just making sure that you can get your message across to the public.
Not at all. And again, knowing that Jordan was in tourism, and certainly, he's running in an area, West Bay North, where there's, a heavy number of constituents who obviously work in that industry. I thought he handled very nicely the question of cruise berthing, the referendum question. And yes, notably, Ellio did not go there. I went there. But again, I thought he handled it very well. Good practice ahead of the chamber debate on Friday, which I think personally he's going to crush. But certainly if your next opportunity to hear more from Jordan Rivers will be on Friday, the 28th of March, as part of the Candidates Forum hosted by the Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce. And then the next opportunity to hear from him here on Straight Talk will be the following Monday, this coming Monday, again at 5 p.m., where we will have the truly distinguished pleasure of hosting Jordan Rivers, candidate for West Bay North, in our studios at 5 o'clock.
No, absolutely. So I definitely enjoyed the interview. It was totally awesome. And again, I just want to I wish them all the best. May the best man win, as the saying goes. But it was definitely a pleasure having Mr. Jordan, and look forward to some more discussion.
No, absolutely.
Even more topics and in greater details in the weeks ahead.
Let me give you some flowers. Yesterday's discussion on refuting, dissecting, tearing apart the remarks made during the CPR meeting by Ms. Marla Dukaran still continued to receive a number of replies from the listening audience, but we literally took that conversation right to the limit. I think you concluded your points at 14 seconds before we had to sign off. So I would say we ventilated that subject very well. But what I didn't get to share with you yesterday, which I will now share with you now, was at least one comment coming from the listening audience. It said, "Well done, Ellio. You picked her apart and showed that the lies and hypocrisy of the CPR group. They don't care about the livelihoods of Caymanians, and that was very evident. But thank you for taking the time to painstakingly review what was said, and whilst they are not comfortable at meeting you at the debate table, clearly you gave us the best of both worlds last night. So congratulations to you,
thank you.
in your conversation, if not your dialogue last night. So there you have it.
Thank you to the person who sent the text, and of course, thank you, buddy. It sounded almost like you were in agreement.
Oh, 100%, 100%. I told you I wanted to get here early. I wanted to make sure I had a good seat.
You had your black shirt on.
I had my black shirt on.
For any sort of burial? Or
yeah, it was. I heard it was. I got a memo saying it was going to be a funeral. I want to make sure I dressed, appropriately. And I think the flowers got put up and everything. It was a very respectful funeral, I must add. Yeah. Well attended. Yeah. And again, I thought it was a very good discussion.
Well, apparently it was well advertised. Well, I want to thank our fan base for that.
Yes. Yeah, well, it was definitely well advertised.
Come on, thank the fan base.
We have to thank the fan base, yes, yeah. Even those who hate us love us and support us, and we do appreciate it.
Like JR in Dallas, the man you love to hate.
The man you love to hate. No press is bad press. We'll take it as it comes. 10 minutes remaining in tonight's discussion. The phone lines are open at 745-2626. Give us a call, whether you want to make a comment on either our two guests this evening, Mr. Philip Ebanks, independent candidate for Red Bay, or our final guest, Mr. Jordan Rivers, running as part of the Cayman Islands National Party team in the constituency of West Bay North. 745-2626 is the number. Or you can send us a WhatsApp message, either a traditional WhatsApp text message or a WhatsApp voice note, audio note, as you want to call it, by dialing 928-2562. But either way, we'd love to hear from you. There is, I guess, one interesting thing I'm sure there's more than one interesting thing.
One interesting thing that caught my eyes.
One interesting thing that caught my eye. Thank you, Ellio. That's quite right.
More than welcome.
Quite
We're
right.
the government. We're here to help.
We're here to help. We share a brain, and sometimes they need that little extra help. In today's Cayman Compass, there is a headline. And again, this is an issue that I've heard from voters more often than not. It says 22 of the 58 men and women candidates who are vying for election on the 30th of April won't be able to vote for themselves, obviously suggesting that in April's general election, only about 60% of all candidates will be able to vote for themselves, as 22 of the political hopefuls live outside of the electoral district in which they are standing. According to the latest revised Register of Electors, which will be finalized on April 1st, 36 of the 58 men and women standing for election are running in a district in which they are registered voters, whilst 22 are running in a constituency in which they do not live. Two of the three political party leaders, Andre Ebanks and Dan Scott, live in districts other than those that they are standing in. There's also, let's see what else we got. We've got Ralston Anglin, Shakina Bush, Jermaine Ebanks Hurlston, and even our last guest, Jordan Rivers, all live in constituencies outside of where they are voting, so they, again, won't get to cast a vote for themselves. Julie Hunter, running in West Bay North, also not having the opportunity to vote for herself. Andre Ebanks, we mentioned. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks, his contender, also living outside of the constituency in which he is running in. Romelia Welcome in Georgetown South. Perlina McGaw-Lumsden, Craig Marin, Kenneth Bryan, Carmen McField, Gary Peanut Ruddy, Vassal Bud Johnson, Roy McTaggart, and I do believe, nope, we have Michael Miles and Sabrina Turner, also living in constituencies where they don't reside. Donna Bush is on that list, as well as Osborne Bodden and Heyman Rankin, and that looks like that is it. All of the rest of the... sorry, Dan Scott, of course, which we mentioned earlier on, rounds us off. So 22 of the 58 candidates won't have the opportunity to vote for themselves, but again, are running in constituencies in which they do not live.
Well, again, I just want to comment on that because I keep happening every election, and I'm not quite sure it is. Again, it's back to that line thing, you see, Austin, who people say the lines don't make a difference. It does make a difference because, again, they're trying to make a case. But I want to stress, first of all, that it's absolutely nothing unlawful, nothing wrong with a person running in a different constituency than where they live. Okay, that's the first thing. And in fact, as far as I'm concerned, it should be this national vote that allows you to be getting votes from just about wherever in the world, wherever in the country that you can get them from. And I think as long as you can get those good representatives, I want to encourage people to look in their constituency, the one that they are voting in, and to send the best man or woman to the parliament. I think that is what is important. And I just want to highlight that because, intended or not, I think it causes something to happen in the minds of voters. Like, I don't know, he's not running in the... And I honestly really don't see that should be an issue.
Yeah, no, indeed. 6:23 is the time in studios.
You seem like you're extra energetic today. You're going back to 5 o'clock.
I am going back to 5 o'clock.
Put your gloves on, man.
I was so excited and enlightened by Jordan Rivers that I swear the clock is running backwards, and I can do another 2 more hours on this program. We just got started, didn't we? Didn't we just sign on?
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, we'll be here till 9 o'clock tonight, ladies and gentlemen.
I feel like that chicken hawk coming out.
Dude, if we had control of the programming and we weren't kicked out exactly at 5 minutes.
We would keep going.
We would literally keep going.
This is why the timer is good, Austin.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Because we were a bunch of slackers sometimes.
We were slackers once upon a time. I mean, undisciplined.
By the way, that's how the 3-hour thing started. You remember? It was like, guys, the program is 2 hours. Yeah, I know, we only went over by 15 minutes.
Yes.
And before you know it, we were up in the 3-hour category.
And even one day, we even ran close to 4.5 hours, I think, at our longest. Yes, no.
Yes, no.
yes. I do regret to a certain extent looking back on, those days, and God knows the stress that we provided, and must have brought on people like the sales manager and the program manager. We were just on a roll, and the audience was there, and but there were company owners in particular saying, "Listen, you guys got to sign off at 10 o'clock."
Yeah, we weren't thinking about
we got people got to start work here, for goodness sake. People were sitting in their cars in parking lots. Not ready to tune us out.
We heard that complaint too.
So again, we're grateful for the listening audience, and we hope, certainly in this programming, in this current format,
we apologize posthumously.
We do apologize posthumously in that regard, but certainly hope that we can captivate your attention going forward, and we're going to make every single effort to do so. I did get one other commentary with 3 minutes 45 seconds remaining on the clock. Taking a look at the headline that said, and I quote, "Government to pay $17.7 million to DART for work on canceled waste management project." This needs to come up in one of your shows, gentlemen. Talk about a waste of money. How is it that people are not protesting in the streets about this? Don't they realize that we're paying for this? We got nothing for this $17.7 million. I'm livid. Something we so desperately needed. I just don't understand it. Well, you know, just to respond to it, I mean, yes, at the end of the day, after, obviously referring to the regen contract that failed to, you know, actually happen. And I've said it before, I say it again, whilst there is oftentimes a cost for doing something and getting it wrong, there's also a cost for doing nothing. And I say so without apology because it's a matter of public record. The PACT administration took office in 2021 and sat on the regen project, which was, you know, at least close to finding a project close, a financial close. They did nothing for 2 years, only ultimately to seek to, you know, exit the contract. The contract was an ambitious one. It sought to divert at least 95% of the waste that currently sits in the Georgetown landfill and turn it into a way to generate electricity, powering up to 2,000 homes in the country, obviously having a significant impact on the power bills for those homes, but more importantly, dealing with, I still to this day believe, to be the single greatest threat to our environment, bar none, over any of the issues currently on the table, and that, of course, being, you know, what's going on at Mount Trashmore. But I look at the $17.7 million and think we got off easy because it could have been $38 million. You know, and before you start criticizing, you say we got nothing out of the deal. Listen, you know, I think DART faithfully applied themselves to that, you know, project. You don't get to have, you know, some of the greatest, brightest minds, you know, in the world on these subjects on retainer cheaply or for free. And certainly you needed those, obviously, professionals in order to, you know, finalize such a project of that magnitude with all of the, you know, various, you know, moving parts. But again, we chose to do nothing. It could have cost us $38 million to exit, as per the Minister of Sustainability, the former Minister of Sustainability, Catherine Ebanks-Wilkes. But we got off with $17.7 million. Still, nonetheless, I can't say the writer is wrong that we aren't protesting in the streets about this, because here we are again with still no solution for our landfill. 50 seconds remaining.
Well, just want to highlight really quickly to say he's absolutely right, or she's absolutely right, when it comes to talking about the royal we need to realize that we're paying for this.
Yes.
And if we even have the population of 80,000, just to do the quick math, 17 million divided by 80,000, each one of us this year will have to give an extra $212 to the government so that we can pay that bill.
Yes.
If it's just Caymanian, the 30,000 working Caymanians, then we're looking at about almost $600. So get your $212 out so we can pay for the bill caused by someone. Right? We can discuss that another day, but important. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening to us. It's been an awesome, awesome show, and hopefully you'll be joining us right here tomorrow, right here on Straight Talk.